Welcome to Test Troop, your go-to hub for professional knowledge sharing. In the previous video, we explored the basics of JavaScript and got hands-on experience using it with Postman. In today's video, we will take it further and focus on writing simple API tests in Postman using JavaScript. We will cover the topic like validating the response code, checking the structure of JSON response bodies, writing an effective assertion, and verifying the data types with JSON request. Additionally, we will look into setting and retrieving collection variables through the scripts, passing the data between the tests, and how to use the looping concepts and using the loops to iterate over the arrays in the response data. So for this example, we will be using the Trello APIs that we've used in the previous exercises. Let's jump into Postman and trying to understand what are the built-in functionalities that Postman provides to automate the API testing. Let's go to one of the requests, and if I go to the script section, I see pre-request and post response. And when I click into pre-request, on the right hand side, I see the lot of code snippet that is provided by the Postman to basically automate the pre-request activity. So if you see, most of them are setting in, most of them are getting a variable, setting a variable, and limited to sending a request. When I come to the post request, I see much more enhanced snippets, basically to retrieve the variables and check the status code, validating the JSON response and things like that. So we will deep dive them one by one. Let's start writing a simple test that verifies the response code. For this exercise, let us use this particular get API, and this API gets the membership of a board, and as per the API documentation, when the request is successful, the server should respond you with 200, right? 200 as a response code. Let's come back to the Postman. Let's go to the script section, go to the post response. Here there is a snippet basically to validate the response code. As soon as I click it, it automatically basically inserts you the code that performs the verification of your response code. So this starts like this. It will always starts with the PM. PM is Postman, and it exposes a lot of functions to perform the task. One of them is a test, and here basically you can give an header what task you are going to perform. Let us say uh, verification of response code 200. Okay, and this is a function. If you see this function, it does not take any parameters, but the body of the function where we are basically validating the response code. PM dot response basically gets the response in that to have the status 200. That means it's basically validating the response code as 200. Okay, so let's save this and try to run this request. And if I go to this particular test result section, it says that I have one test and the test is basically passed. Okay, let us try to do something else. We are trying to see whether it is giving me 400. This test is giving me 400 and by passing the parameter as 400. But actually this is a correct test and it should return me 200, but I am checking whether it is returning 400 or not. Okay, so this test basically should fail now, right? So let's run this test. You see, I was expecting 400, but I got 200. Okay, let us make it 200. Let us make it as 200. Okay, let's tweak this test and try to access a resource that is not available. Basically, instead of me, let us give as no one. Ideally, this should return me 404 as per the documentation. and but we are verifying for a 200 code. So this test should fail. Let us save and run. See, server returned 404, but I was expecting 200. Eventually the test is failed. Now let us revert back this test. Save and execute. Now the test failed. This is how we can write a simple test just to validate or verify the status code. Let's proceed further. Along with validating the response code, let us also start validating the response body as well, some parameters of the response body. Let's try how to do this. For this exercise, let us use the API get a board. If you see get a board, it try to get details of a board for a past ID. Okay, so you need to pass an ID, then it gets the details like whether it is closed, is false, or like what is the description, what is the name, and things like that. Right? Then all the information related to a particular board. Let us try this with our Postman. So I already created a request. I have a status test. Along with that, I will also write a test to basically validate the JSON body. So for this, post response, for this we can use the test response body contains a string. Okay, for example, we can use this, or yeah, we can also, rather than using this, let us use this JSON check. Okay, this is the right one actually. So as I told, this will the test will start something like this: postman dot test with your heading check for a board name. So we are validating the board name. If you see, the board name is type string, right? And if you can go to the documentation, it also says the board name is of type string, right? Yeah, responses if you see, and child properties, the name is a string. Response, the name is a string. So it's a kind of it's a it's a string. So we have to validate that. So how do you validate the function? So what we are doing, basically we are writing this into a variable. So pm dot response dot json basically gets the response in a JSON format, and I am storing it in a variable called JSON data, and then I am putting this assertion telling that I am expecting JSON dot data dot, it is not a value here, if you see it is a name. Instead of value, I will put it as a name. I am expecting to equals to the value. So I should give this as a value. I am expecting this as a value. I need to give it in within double quotes, telling that it is a string, right? It is a string type. So what I did, basically I went and I took this particular snippet, it automatically inserted a code. I basically changed the property that I am basically trying to validate. The property is name here. So the name, the value for the name is the value for this name is board created by Trello API. Okay. This is a small test where I am basically running, trying to get a board for a given board ID. If you see the parameter, I am passing the board ID as a parameter, and for this ID, it basically gives me the properties of a board, and one of them is a name. I am trying to validate that name here. This is how we do it, and just try to run this. There are two tests now. The one is the verification of the status code, another one is the verification of the particular property within the JSON response. And there are two tests which are passed. Let us try a negative test. Instead of API, I will give an hyphen here. Yeah, so this is save this and try to execute. Basically it should fail. See, it failed. It was expecting, it was basically I am expecting this one, but I got this one, right? So let us turn it back. Save this, send it. This is failed. This is how we basically validate a particular properties within a response JSON. Let us go one step further and try to verify the type of a parameter. For example, in a get a board request, you see the response. When you receive a response, you see lot of parameters. For example, the name is type of a string, description is a string, then printed is a boolean, URL is a string, and in case if you want to validate them, the Postman provides a built-in function to validate that. So let us see how to do this, and we will use the same, we'll copy paste the same test, and we'll try to modify this. Check data types of few properties. Okay, for example, let us take first name. For that we need to write pm dot expect bracket the parameter name. The parameter is a property here, that is basically JSON data dot name, then dot to b to dot b dot to be a type is like string or something like that. Let us put it as a string, and let's save this, try to execute. You see 3 steps, all of them are passed. And if I come to the body, I also see pinned, right? The property pinned is of type boolean. Let's see how to verify that, right? Same thing, I can copy basically up to here JSON data, and I can do dot pinned. Let's copy this, to dot p dot boolean. This is passed, right? And this is passed. This is how basically we can verify the property type. Yeah, and if you see the body itself is an object, is an object, right? It is a JSON object. Let's try to verify the response itself is an object or not, type object or not, right? This is an object, entire response. So instead of JSON data, here I can remove this, and instead of JSON data I can only give the JSON data. Yeah, to be, this is not to be a, instead of this it's to be an, and you can give it as object. Code test, yeah, all of them are passed. So how to use which assertion? You can go through Google and basically check for the documentation about the built-in utility utilities of the Postman. Let us consider a request that has the array of JSON objects, and let us see how to parse them and try to validate JSON properties. Okay, for this example, I will be using get membership of the board, which basically sends the response me back with the number of boards and its information. If you go to my account, currently I have two boards, and when I try to execute this particular request, it should give me two JSON objects, and let's try to execute it using a Postman. I send this request. You see there is an array and which has got the two elements. To see them precisely, let us write a small test, and is a post response. Let us use the JSON value check, and let us remove this particular line, and let us use the variable as let and JSON data. Let's try to print this console dot log JSON data. Try to execute this. In the console you can see there are two elements. The zeroth element is basically displaying the data of a board by name this one, Trello API by Trello API. The first element is displaying the data about the board with the name working with Trello API, right? So if, for example, if you want to validate the name of the second board or the name of the first board, how to do this? Let us try to do this. This can be done with the help of an array object, right? So you can do pm dot expect, then we have JSON data of index 0 dot name, sorry, index of 0 dot name to eql. Sorry, I am missing a bracket here. Sorry, should be JSON data to dot equal, and for the zeroth one, what is the name? I can take this as a name, and for the first one, name is this one, right? Yeah. Now let's save this. Try to execute this test. You see, two tests are passed. So you can write your test name. Sorry, I forgot to write a test name. Verify board names. See, you can see, verify the board names. In case if you want to know how many JSON elements are part of this particular response, you can do by printing console dot log Then we have this JSON data dot length. Let's try to execute this. Sorry, I have made a mistake. Yeah, you see the value is 2. And we can also do a kind of an assertion for this. How do we do this? We take this as pm dot expect if you sure that your board your the workspace has two boards, then you can basically put an assertion here, length to equals, and you can put it as 2. Let us remove this line and try to execute a test. You see the test is passed, right? If I make it as 1, this should fail basically. You see this is failed because we are expecting 2 but we got it as 1. This is how we can parse an array of JSON objects which is part of the response data. Hope you understood. So in this example, the response from the JSON is an array of JSON object. In order to retrieve a particular element within a JSON object, we are using an array index. If you see here, we are basically hard coding the array indexes to retrieve a particular property of a JSON object. This works very well when the response has a less number of JSON objects within an array. Think of a condition if an response has an array with hundreds of JSON objects, then hard coding is not an efficient method. For this to work efficiently in such cases, we use the looping concepts. There are many kinds of loops that are available within a JavaScript like for loop, while loop, but I will be demonstrating how to parse a particular JSON element using a for loop. Let us understand how to use a for loop. For loop is always starts with the keyword for in JavaScript and then the starting value, the initializer, then let I equal to 0 from where the loop should start and where the loop should end. Okay, so for this example, let us consider that I have an array with 10 elements. Length of an array is 10 element. Then if I want to iterate over an array, I will start with 0 and I will end with 10. This is basically a condition. So this loops over. I will start with 0, then I am going to increment the I value. So every iteration starts with 0. Every iteration I will increment till I becomes 10. Then when I is equal to 10, 10 is not less than 10, right? Then this condition will fail and this this iteration will also stop, and then followed by the set of commands that you want to execute. In this case, I will just try to print a value of I. So here I should start with 0 and this should end with at a 9. Okay, so let us check whether it works fine or not. If you see, it started with 0, it ended with 9. This is how basically for loop works, and the looping concept is very important while iterating over an array, and also this is one of the efficient method. Let us try to rewrite this test using a for loop. For let I equal to 0, I less than length of the array, that is JSON data, comma, le length, then I plus plus, and console dot log of I. Let's first try to print. We should give 0 and 1. I go to console here. You see it is 0 and 1. Now let's try iterating over an array of JSON objects and try to print the property name. How do we do it? Console dot log, then JSON data of I, because the index is I, dot the property is name. Let's try executing this. You see we have names of two boards, right? We have two boards, one by name board created by Trello API, another one is working with Trello API. Now let us try to print the board names using an the for loop iterating over the JSON array of JSON objects. So for this we need the length of an array, which is basically JSON data dot length. So we will be starting with 0 and we'll going up to the length of the JSON array. After that, what we are doing, instead of I, we will be replacing with JSON dot, then with then index as an I and name. Let's run this now. You can see we have the names of two boards here. Now let us try to validate the board names using the for loop and the condition, if condition. So for this, uh, we need to write a bit of logic. So how do we write it? If this name equals to this value, this string, right? Yeah, then we'll have to do work. What you can do is you can add a counter. We can basically add a counter to count the number of occurrences. Let counter equals to 0. Then we can increment a counter here. You can write counter plus plus or counter equal to counter plus 1. So again we can copy this one, then we'll try to paste the same. Little bit of indentation to make the code looks better. Yeah, then counter equal to counter plus plus. So the value of the counter should be 2 because we are having the two boards, and this basically should we are validating, right? So the comparison should lead into the two values, right? So that is what we are trying to compare, and once we come out of the for loop, we can do a PM expect. The counter value should be equal to 2. That we can do PM expect dot sorry of counter we can copy from here, 2 equals to 2. Here this is our test. Basically what we are doing, we are trying to compare uh, the name of the board that we get it from the response with the board name. Ideally we should store it in a variable. If you know the already created board name, while creating a board we can basically store this in a variable, and when we are trying to get, what we can do is we can compare with the stored variable. So what we are doing here is we are trying to compare and incrementing the counter. So since we have a two boards, the counter should be equal to 2. This is what we are basically doing. Let us check this. Basically we don't need this now because we are removing that with the for loop. Right. Yeah. You see, two tests are failed. Two tests are passed here. Both of them are passed. Okay. And what we can also do is trying to print the counter here. So that will be console dot log of counter. The value is 2, right? So if I put it as 1, this test should fail now. See, this is failed because we are expecting 2, but we are expecting 2, but we got it 1, right? So yeah, so let us change this back. Yeah, this is how we can basically verify the JSON properties which are within the array response, within the response array. Okay, hope you understood this concept of the for loop and the evaluating the condition using the if statements. If you see here, we are basically comparing the board names with an hard-coded value. So what we can do better here is, instead of using an hard-coded value, we can store the board names while its creation, during its creation, we can store the board names into the variable, and while retrieving the board names using this get API, then we can do the comparison. So in this section, what we do is we will focus more on storing the data into a variable and retrieving the data from the variable. Let us see how to set and get the variable. So for this, I will delete this code snippet, and what I will do is I'll um, I'll try to show how to set a variable. We can set a different kinds of variable. So let us do start with the collection variable. Pm dot collection variable dot set. It takes a key value pair, and basically key is a string. We can give as my name, for example, and the value is test true. Let us run the script, and this will be stored in a collection variable. We can use the collection variable by going to our collection and then right click here. Then we can do an edit. Then we can go to a variable section, and in the variable you can see here it has created a variable called my name, whose value is test true. Now let us see how to retrieve this variable, right? And this can be done using pm dot collection variable dot get. Then you have to pass the variable name, and this will return you, in turn it will return you the value stored in that particular variable. Let my name val is equal to this one, and then do a console dot log You see, it is displaying the value that is stored in this variable. This is how we can basically store the variables in different types of variables. Like it can be a local variable, or it is a collection variable, or it can be an environment variable, and we can retrieve these values, and this can be used as a reference for the our validation purpose or the comparison purpose. So we will do some hands-on we will try out some hands-on examples to use the collection variable. And for this example, what we can do is we can create a new board, and then we store the board name and board ID into the collection variable. And after that, we can add the list to multiple lists to this board and try to get the list in a board and make a comparison, right? This is what we are going to do as a part of an exercise. Let's start creating a board. For this exercise, I already created an um, this particular request. I just copied it from create board, right? Just click over here on the three dots, then you can create a duplicate. And I already have it here. And let's give the board name as create board exercise 001. Okay. And when you run this request, in response server will give the ID and the name, and we will try to store this in a variable. Okay. Okay, let us take this one. Okay, let us go to the scripts. On the post request, we can write add a snippet as a 200 code, and after that we will try to set a variable, right? We will try to set a variable. This can be done by pm dot set pm dot collection variable dot set. We'll give this one as an ID variable name, and ID is, so for that we need to get a JSON body, right? So yeah, we will write, yeah, so we will take this one, yeah, and put it here. Let's delete this one. I will use let, this will be json.data dot id, and I will also set another variable. This is basically a name. This will be this. Try to save this and try to execute this. Yeah, so it is created a board. We got a response. Go to the variable now in the edit section, variables. You see, this is what we have, right? So we will use this for creating our list. We'll create a, I will also make a copy of this, create a list, duplicate it, then create list for exercise. Just save this, and instead of what it needs is we have to pass a name. We can pass a name as uh, okay, let's create a name as board. Yes, instead of this we can give as new 001. Yeah. And the board ID is it is stored somewhere like something like this, right? See, it is already stored. So we can create while in response when we create this is also again trying to give me the ID and name, right? Board ID and the board basically the list ID and the list name. So let us try to save them as well. Let's go to the scripts, post response, again add this one as a test. It should be successful. Then we will also take this and we will use this again here. Select, then we can delete this. And what I can do is pm dot collection variable dot set, then the name collection variable dot set, then the key will be, again I will take this as a key. Instead of board I will put it as a list, ID, and this will be JSON red dot ID. Again the name, this will be dot name. Let's execute this. Is successful. Again we can go and verify the variable. You see it is created. Let us again try to create another list. Yeah, just make a duplicate, and this one I will make it as 002 002. Everything remains the same. Here I will make it as doing 001, and in the script section I'll make it as 002 here, and I'll make it as a 002. Save this, execute it. Right, I have got an ID and these are all now stored. Again I can go back to the variable. Sorry, I can go back to the variable and just check it. See, all these values are now stored. So now in the next exercise what we will do, we will try to get number of list in a given board and try to compare with these stored values, right? Then we will retrieve the variable, and while comparison we will try to retrieve and do the comparison. So we will be using this particular API gets lists on a board. Let us copy this request and use it in a Postman. I'll take out this because this is a base URL. These are it basically needs an ID. What we can do is we can make it as a path variable, and for these values we can pass a collection variable as an API key, and this will be a token, and this ID will be this will be create board exercise ID 001, right? Yeah, this is the one. Let us save this. Yeah, let's try to execute it to check whether it works fine or not. Yeah, it works fine. And see, doing 001, and then there is a new 001. This values we already have it. Now try to put an validation for that. Okay, let us remove all these things. First clear also the console, then go to the post response section. Status code is 200. Then we will write another test verifying the JSON check, and for this we will go name, verify the list ID and name. Right, the similar logic we will use it here. We have JSON data. This is basically an I think this is basically an array here, right? Let's put it an array, and let's go into a for loop. I equal to 0, I less than JSON data dot length, then I plus plus within a body. I can do a JSON data dot I dot dot name dot name equals to what is our collection variable? PM is not equal to, it's double equal to PM dot collection variable dot get. Yeah, the values are here. Go to an edit variables. Yeah, these are basically the variables, right? This is an ID. This is an ID. And this is a name. Something like this. And yeah, this is, sorry, there should be ID and this should be name. So we have to do it for 2 times because we have 2 lists, right? So again we will put it in under a comparison. Counter equal to 0. Okay, then we can put if statement. If it is true, then counter equal to counter plus 1. So let us add this everywhere. So let us add here, let us add it here, and let us add it here. Little bit indentation, and this should be 0 2, and this is also should be 0 2, and everywhere we should put if statement. then here also if statement, then here also if statement. So we have counter. Now we have to write a logic like the counter should be equal to 4, right? pm dot expect of counter to equal of 4, right? Save this. 001 001 name, id and name, again id, 002 id and 02. Hope this, yeah. Think something is failed here. Reference error, 0 is not defined. Yeah, sorry, this is an error I made. It should be 0. Again, expected 0 to deeply equal to 4. Something is wrong here. So let's debug this. Did you understand what is the mistake I made? So I was supposed to take a list ID, but I took a board ID. That is wrong, right? So I'll have to compare with the list ID. That is why the counter was coming as 0. Let's go back to our collection, edit, and we will take, yes, we'll take this one and replace it here. 001 name, 001 ID, 002 name, 002 name. Now it should work. Let's try. Again it is failed. Counter is not defined. I removed the counter. Let us copy from here. Counter equal to 0. See, now both the tests are passed. This is basically how we can store the value from one test into a variable and pass this value into another test. So far in the video or in the session, what we have done a lot of things during the post response. What we have done is, once the response is received, we pass the responses, right? We perform certain kind of a validation on the data that is received on the response. We also try to set certain kind of variables also. So in this section we will try to work the pre-request part of the Postman scripting. For this exercise, let us use request response.in website, and where we can see um, lot of APIs that have been listed, and we specifically pick up creating an user, right? So this is a kind of a post request. Let us take this, the endpoint. Sorry. Uh, let's copy this. Let us go to the Postman sphere. Let us go to Postman and let us go to that particular section where we created the user management, right? So let us do a duplicate of one and then use this. Yeah, so instead of this I will use create user. Let's save this and this is a post request, and it basically needs, what it needs is, if I come to the document, it needs a body. In the body you need to pass a name and a job. Let us copy this like this, and go back to Postman, go to the body here, and then let us put this one like this. Let us save, and let's run this. Let's see whether it runs properly or not. Just a sanity check. It is created, so the response is 201. So let us try to set this variable, the name variable, dynamically using the scripts. For this we will use a prerequisite script. I already have a code that I wrote to generate a random name. I'll just copy this and paste it here. Okay, and this basically generates an random name, and what it does is I'm storing some random names in an array, first name and last name, and then I'm calling the random function, which is a built-in function which gives me a value between 0 to 1, which yeah, and then what I'm doing is I'm multiplying with the length of this array, and then I'm floating it. Floating it means I'm converting the floating number into an integer number, so that I get an index here, right? So let's run this program and try to see uh, what it prints in the console. For that, let us clear this. Now it printed me Michael Anderson, the Michael, and from here, and Anderson, it took it here from the here. Again, let us use Sophia Brown. So every time when I run, it gives me a random number, and what I will do is I will set this into a collection variable as pm collection variable dot set, as the key is user name for create, and the value is whatever we got it here, right? Let's see what happens now. Let's run this. See the so did I miss? Okay, I will also try to print. Okay, console dot log, then random name. The name is James Smith. I'll come here and see the variable is James Smith. I will try to execute it again. Now it is Jane Tyler. What I will do is I will again try to open this, edit here. See, this is Jane. This is basically overwriting. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to use this variable in the body. Instead of this name, we will replace this with a variable, and for that I will go and get the variable, and this is a variable that I used. I come back here and I'll just replace this, but one thing you should remember, this should go as a string. To enclose this as a string, we have to enclose it in a double quotes. Now basically just save it and run this. It's creating a name, Emily Smith. Again run this, Emily Tyler. So we can also basically clear here. We can also examine what is the value that is going in as part of the body. Try execute this. Yes, we can come here and you can see the request body. It is sending as Olivia Johnson. See, it's a JSON. This is how we can also make use of uh, the the pre-request script, where we can write lot of Java codes. So hope you understood and the concept is clear for you how to use the JavaScript both at the pre-request and post-response section. Brings to the end of this tutorial. In this tutorial, we explored how to write simple API tests in Postman using JavaScript. We covered key topics including validating the response codes, checking the structure of a JSON response bodies, writing effective assertions and verifying the data types in JSON request, setting and retrieving collection variables through scripts, passing data between tests, and using the loops to iterate over the arrays in response data. I also showed some examples in the pre-request part as well. I hope you found this session helpful. If you enjoyed learning, please consider supporting the channel by subscribing. Thank you.